This is the worst situation the regime has come close to facing since 1979. Huge numbers of Ayatollah Khamenei's immediate advisors and staff have been killed by the Israeli attacks. He's said, and I don't know the truth of this, I read what I read, he's said to be very much an isolated man. He's in a state of significant shock with questions as to how much he's controlling himself.
Iran's nuclear sites have been destroyed, and the Iranian regime teeters on the brink of collapse. It's a new day in the Middle East. And joining us now to break down what comes next is Colonel Richard Kemp, former commander of all British forces in Afghanistan and a renowned expert on global security in the Middle East. Richard, you're joining us now from Tel Aviv. It is great to see you, my friend. And just coming across the wire, some breaking news. Apparently, the Iranian regime has responded and launched missiles at U.S. bases in Qatar and Iraq. We don't have a lot of details yet, of course, but your initial impression, Richard, is this kind of what we expected in terms of an Iranian response after what happened on Saturday night, the destruction of its nuclear facilities?
I think it's entirely predictable, Eric. I think it was really a matter of time, whether the regime wanted to wait a bit and get their ducks in a row or whether they wanted to lash out straight away. And I think that's what we're seeing now. Yeah.
And we'll see if there's a U.S. response. President Trump essentially promised to unleash hell if Iran dared to strike back. So we'll see how this plays out, Richard. But, hey, let's take it back to Saturday night, to the big event which precipitated everything we're talking about right now. Obviously, a bold move by President Trump. What is your assessment, Richard? It seems, number one, that the nuclear facilities were successfully destroyed. But number two, where do things go from here? It seems the Iranian regime now, between Israel pounding Iranian assets on the ground and the U.S. strikes, of course, it seems the Iranian regime may be on the brink of collapse. How do you see it? Do you think the regime could still survive?
I think the regime could still survive. I hope not. I think it would be a service to the whole world if operations of Israel and the United States combined had created a situation where this regime collapses. It's been very strong. It's been in existence since 1979, as we all know. There's been many occasions when Iranians have wanted to bring it down. It's very hated in the country, but it's managed to withstand all of that. This is a different situation. This is the worst situation the regime has come close to facing since 1979. Huge numbers of Ayatollah Khamenei's immediate advisors and staff have been killed by the Israeli attacks. He's said, and I don't know the truth of this, I read what I read, he's said to be very much an isolated man. He's in a state of significant shock with questions as to how much he's controlling himself. But of course, he still has some pretty strong men around him. And so it could stand up. But, I think there's also every chance that there could be some kind of regime change. In other words, toppling this regime, whether it's by one of the oppositionist groups in Iran, which there are many. I don't quite know how well organized they are and whether they're strong enough to actually bring it down, or indeed by the army, or the IRGC itself. Of course, if the IRGC stages a coup and takes over, that's really pretty much no change from what we've got now.
Yeah, great breakdown, Colonel Kemp. And look, Ayatollah Khamenei is 86 years old. There have been reports over the years that he's in bad health, so he's kind of teetering himself. Hey, I've been comparing President Trump and Bibi Netanyahu to a man you know very well, Winston Churchill. They met, much like Churchill saw the gathering storm of Nazi Germany. He acted. Trump and Bibi have acted against the gathering storm of that Iranian axis. And now, because of their bold leadership, the Iranian Ring of Fire is pretty much a smoldering heap of ruins. Richard, can you talk about the importance of the strong leadership displayed by Trump and Bibi working in tandem to bring down this existential threat?
Yeah, well, Prime Minister Netanyahu has been absolutely focused on bringing down the nuclear threat to Israel for many, many years now and has worked relentlessly towards doing that. Former presidents in the United States have essentially resisted him, tried to prevent him from taking action, have tried to appease the Iranian regime. And that's not just for presidents in the US. That's also most Western leaders who can only think in terms of a diplomatic solution. Let's talk about it. And of course, that talk has got nowhere. You cannot negotiate with a regime like the regime in Iran. They would never honor any agreement that went against their perceived interests. So I think what we've seen here is, the culmination of many years of determination by the Israeli Prime Minister to end this. It's a threat not just to his country, it's a big threat to this country, but it's a threat to the whole of the Middle East. It's a threat to the world if Iran managed to get hold of nuclear weapons. And I would say standing up against the Ayatollahs and standing up against what I would say is the weight of world opinion against taking action is certainly Churchillian on the part of both Trump and Netanyahu.
Yeah, well said. And look, you're a student of history, Richard. You're a defender, a fierce defender of Judeo-Christian Western civilization. You mentioned world opinion, obviously, against this strike, especially in the West. Why this inclination? I call it almost a suicidal impulse. Why do we have this weakness? We can't see inside their minds, of course, but it just seems to be this endemic weakness among Western leaders and a reluctance to defend their civilization. And then comes Donald Trump smashing the paradigm. We need more people, it seems, like Trump, like Bibi, to come alongside them. Do you see any sense that the West may wake up anytime soon?
No, I don't. And I think, another example of Western weakness has been over Ukraine, where, and also that applied to weakness in the Biden administration as well, but certainly in Europe. The European leaders, including in the UK and France, Germany and other countries, particularly Western Europe, not so much in the East, have been totally unwilling to do everything they can to help Ukraine drive the Russians out. And as a consequence, the Russians have kept advancing. And that really is a sign of, I think, of Western fear of a nuclear-armed Russia, which, of course, also reflects on what fear they might have even more over Iran if it got nuclear weapons. And an unwillingness to stand up for themselves. And you just have to look at our own Prime Minister. He said several times, we can't let Iran have a nuclear weapon. And we must negotiate to achieve this. I've said what I think of negotiation before. But I think in his case, and the case of many Western European leaders, one of the biggest problems, apart from a lack of moral courage and moral strength, is their own electorates at home. They're focused not on what is the right thing to do or what's strategically important internationally, but on their own electorates. And in the case of Starmer, he's got a very strong electorate that supports his party and that he hopes will support his party, that is anti-Israel, is anti-Britain as well. And that's his priority. So, you see marches on the streets of London every day, including on Saturday this week, we saw mobs on the streets of London with brandishing placards of Ayatollah Khamenei saying, be on the right side of history, basically be on Khamenei's side. And that's what he's worried about. And he doesn't have the strength, I don't think, to lead opinion in Britain. He wants to follow it.
Operation Rising Lion, over the past 11 days or so, stunning military achievements, weakening the Iranian regime, perhaps to the point of no return. What's been your take, just from a military perspective, of how the IDF, the Israeli Air Force, have operated in Iran during this campaign?
I think it's been absolutely staggering what they've done. I think they've shocked the world and certainly shocked Iran. Of course, the campaign started off with airstrikes and on-the-ground Israeli commando forces who were, and in Mossad, I think they were described as Mossad agents on the ground, who carried out the killing, the elimination of some of the most senior members of the Iranian military hierarchy, as well as a significant number of the most important nuclear scientists. And since then, we've seen strike after strike after strike as the IDF, the Air Force, have taken apart basically the regime and its military capabilities. It's not finished by any means. It's been badly damaged. But its response has been extremely weak, comparatively speaking, given the difference. Israel is a tiny country compared to Iran, which was deemed to be a major military power. Yet Iran has fired something like 500 ballistic missiles and around about 1,000 drones at Israel since in the weeks since this war began. The total effect has been to kill 25 people inside Israel, nightly attacks almost. 25 people is terrible. Every single Israeli death is a tragedy, but it is nothing in strategic terms. I don't say that with any, I say that recognizing the value of every life, but they've achieved almost nothing really. They've destroyed quite a few buildings, damaged others, but something like 80 or 90% of those ballistic missiles have been taken out before they were able to impact, either by the Air Force, before they entered Israeli airspace, or indeed by Israeli missile defenses and American missile defenses. So it shows the power of Israel. It shows the utter weakness of this regime. And I think that weakness, exposing that weakness in the way it is, can only encourage oppositionists in Iran to rise up and bring the regime down, because they're not the strong man that they've tried to portray themselves as.
Yeah, great point. Certainly a paper tiger. They've been exposed for all the world to see. And Colonel, it's interesting, October 7th, 2023 was kind of a high point in an evil way for Iran and its proxies. But on that day, it seems they signed their own death warrants. Hamas, Hezbollah in their death throes, the Houthis getting walloped, Iran itself now. How stunning has that been to you, the turnaround in a year and a half, number one? And number two, can you see a new Middle East perhaps emerging out of this, a more peaceful region?
Yeah, it's incredible. They did, as you say, they basically signed their own death warrant when they initiated the invasion of Israel on the 7th of October. And they've seen all of their proxies, pretty much all of them, either severely damaged or taken out of the game. They've spent billions of dollars on building that network with the sole purpose of destroying Israel. And the consequence of it has been their own destruction. As to the future of the Middle East, I think there's no question that most Arab countries are strongly behind Israel in the fight both against Hamas in Gaza, but also, of course, in the fight against Iran. Iran and Hamas is as big a threat to Arab countries around the region as it is to Israel. Hamas, of course, is part of a much wider Muslim Brotherhood network, which threatens every Arab country. And Iran hates Sunni Muslim countries just as much as it hates Israel. So the Middle East is behind Israel, I think, largely. And it will see Israel's strength, and that will encourage even more than existed before the desire of countries like Saudi Arabia and other Arab countries to normalize relationships with Israel, which was on the cards before, but now I think even more so. So, yeah, I think we're going to see a much more strongly unified Middle East. And, of course, let's not forget Syria, which the Assad regime was shattered as a result of Israel's actions and then brought down. There's even possibly hope of some kind of rapprochement between Syria and Israel. I'm not over-optimistic on that, but it is a possibility. I don't see peace and harmony forever across the Middle East, but I certainly see a significantly changed one from the chaos we've been witnessing up to now.
Yeah, it truly is an incredible turnaround. Hey, by the way, you were recently in Gaza. You're observing the great work of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. Our good friend Johnny Moore actually heads up the GHF. Here's a quick clip of Colonel Kemp in Gaza. Take a look.
Richard Kemp at one of the GHF food distribution centres inside Gaza. As you can see behind me, there are a large number, around about 20,000 Gazans have come here to collect aid delivered into Gaza by the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. And there's about 20 trucks worth of food behind me. And I hope that some of the international aid and humanitarian organisations that have rejected the GHF's work will rethink this. This is a really important mission that the GHF is carrying out in the interest of the welfare and feeding of the people of Gaza.
Colonel Kemp, you've been on the ground in Israel since this war began. You've been bringing us the truth of what's really happening in places like Gaza. Can you talk real quick about the mainstream media narrative about Gaza, genocide, et cetera, and the truth about Gaza, which in that clip we just saw, you're reporting what's really going on there?
Yeah, of course, there's no genocide in Gaza. There's actually very little. There's certainly, I don't believe there's any real starvation in Gaza, such as you might see in places, other places around the world. The IDF have been facilitating huge amounts of aid into Gaza. since this war began, about 20 months or so ago. And they've been doing everything they can to eliminate Hamas, to bring the hostages back and minimize the civilian deaths in Gaza. I think this Gaza Humanitarian Foundation project really sums it up, the attitude to that. The two, believe it or not, the two enemies of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which aims to get aid to the Gazan people without it falling into the hands of Hamas. The two enemies obviously are Hamas, but the United Nations is the enemy as well. The United Nations has opposed it all along, and that tells you as much about the United Nations as it tells you about Hamas.
A sad commentary, but you're getting some real commentary, some truthful commentary, folks, here from our good friend, Colonel Richard Kemp. Be sure to follow him on X, across social media for breaking insights and real-time analysis. Colonel Kemp, it is always great to see you. Be safe, my friend. We hope to see you very soon in Israel, as a matter of fact. God bless, Colonel Kemp. We'll see you again soon. Stakelbeck Tonight, my all-new nightly series on current events through a bold biblical lens. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an upload, and tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. And don't forget to share your thoughts, insights, and comments below. Thanks for watching, and God bless.